Today, some of our best segments from the global lane. Remaining vigilant and prepared for war. The largest bilateral military exercise ever conducted between the United States and Australia, Operation Talisman Sabre, is now underway down under. The goal of the 35,000 participants from 19 nations is to uphold a free and open Indo-Pacific. Some observers view the exercise as a response to the Chinese naval buildup and aggression in the South China Sea. Well, joining us to share some insights on the China military threat and allied preparedness to counter it is William Dunn, a retired Marine colonel, military analyst, and the president of Strategic Resilience Group. Colonel Dunn, tell us about Operation Talisman Sabre. Would an exercise on this scale occur if China weren't a threat in the Indo-Pacific region?
Well, hey, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate you bringing me on today. And yeah, Talisman Sabre is a great exercise. It's the largest one, 35,000, 19 nations, as you mentioned. And really what this does, and I want everyone to kind of sort of back down a little. So, we're not doing this to prepare just for war, right? We're doing this to prepare for deterrence, to prepare for peace, as well as to prepare for operating with our other teammates, our allies, in a multi-nation operation/exercise. We do these exercises routinely, not on this scale. And the reason why we do them is simply to bring all of these forces together so that we learn and we train and we operate just like we are if we go to war. It should be seen more as in my mind, right, I'm hopeful, as a precursor to peace, because when our adversaries see how easily we bring together all these nations, this many folks, and we operate in a extended exercise, they should see that we could quickly transmit that into combat if necessary.
Well, we see Norway, Netherlands, Thailand, Singapore, and India have joined the exercise this year, especially India's participation. What statement does that make?
That's an interesting statement. Ideally, it's telling the world is that India is ready to become a worldwide player to support a free world. And so I think it's a good statement for them. I don't know personally what their level of participation is. And what I will throw out, sometimes you'll have a nation that will put in, of the 35,000, maybe they'll put in 5,000 or 1,000. Sometimes they'll put in a very few number of people. That is not to be looked down upon. That is a great thing, because just sending liaison individuals to support us is a great building block for future teamwork and obviously future support.
Bill, how strong is this military alliance? To what extent could the U.S. and Australia count on these nations to join in militarily in the event of war with China over, say, Taiwan?
We know our friends in the UK will be there wherever we go. I'm confident of that. What every nation, in my mind, will look at is what is required for their vital interest. There are some that will definitely come with us. I wouldn't put a guarantee that everybody would come. I would like to think they would, but you never know. We've done missions, if you will, where some of our great allies have not given us overflight. So we've had to fly around their countries because they don't want to be seen as supporting a mission, specifically in the Middle East, a mission of the U.S. against a Middle Eastern partner. So, ideally what this does, it strengthens our relationship when we're talking military to military personnel, very often at our level, at the, general officer level, at the colonel level, or at the staff NCO level, the team and the people we're working with would support each other to death, if you will. We could rely on them. But the country and the civilian leadership of their country is going to depend who's actually going to come to fight when the bullets start flying.
And half a world away in Istanbul, Iran is holding talks with the British, French, and Germans. They're still insisting they'll rebuild their nuclear facilities. How likely would you say it is that the U.S. and Israel may have to bomb them again? Are we looking at peace on the verge of breaking out in the Middle East, or is a regional war coming?
If Iran pursues a nuclear weapon, again, I fully expect additional strikes. Period. And we as American citizens should demand that of our president and our military. We should demand that, not for Israel's sake, if you will, right? We should demand that for the protection of our families, our children, and the future generations of America. All Americans should demand and agree that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon because they promised to destroy Israel and the United States. So if that happens and they decide to do it again, I fully expect additional strikes. We, from everything I've seen, prevented regime change or helped prevent regime change because Israel, I think, had a plan for that. And President Trump, at least open source, has said that he wanted that not to happen. I agree with that. Regime change in a place like Iran could cause a humanitarian disaster for 40 million people. It could be terrible. And we're not ready, and we should not be ready or want to go in and fix that. Stability in the region, temporary at best.
Okay, Colonel William Dunn, thank you for sharing your insights today. We appreciate it. Bring it on. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei digs in his heels after Trump calls on Iran to surrender. Posting on social media, the supreme leader announced the battle begins. Ali returns to Khyber with his Zulfiqar. The references to the 7th century and the first Shia Imam Ali, who conquered the Jewish town of Khyber by sword. Joining us with more is Greg Roman, Executive Director of the Middle East Forum. Greg, Khamenei, his country is weakened. He's no match for the Israeli Air Force, which now has free reign over the skies of Iran. The Times of Israel reports that one Iranian official described the Ayatollah's risk of miscalculation as extremely dangerous. Now, you've been following this for years. So is he likely to surrender or try to usher in an apocalyptic end with the return of the 12th Imam, the Mahdi?
We have to look at what's happening with his background and the officers who have been advising him. The entire command and control structure of the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is now gone. People who were advising him the day before the war are no longer in their place, and even their replacements are gone. The only person that's left at the top, very much alone, and even having given orders to a committee of the IRGC to run Iran in case of his demise, is now situated in such a point that in one direction he may capitulate and surrender, in the other he may decide to go all the way. But either way, I think right now he's feeling very lonely at the top, and I think his decisions will be made in such a way that's best for his preservation, not for the preservation of the Islamic Republic.
Yes, it's like calling in a security meeting and nobody shows up. There's no one in the room other than him. So Israel needs U.S. involvement, of course, to take out hard-to-reach underground nuclear enrichment facilities like the Fordo facility in Qum.
24 kilometers northeast of Qum is the Fordo fuel enrichment plant. The fuel being uranium with the capacity to be enriched to weapons-grade levels of 90%.
What we're talking about is a specific American weapon, which is 30,000-pound precision-guided bomb, and it can only be carried by the B-2 stealth bomber right now, because that's the only plane that's configured to carry such a weapon.
So what happens if the U.S. does not join Israel and provide those bunker buster bombs?
Well, Israel has in its battle plans ways in which to disrupt Fordo's operations in Qom in such a way that it can prevent access to the facility rather than to destroy the facility. We already saw this took place in Isfahan and in Natanz, where they bombed the entrances to the underground enrichment facilities, and they also bombed the areas that were providing a supply of electricity. So this notion that you have to destroy the facility by bombing it is one which is a misnomer, insofar as if you're able to cut off the power supply, the centrifuges which are running could be disrupted. And the Israelis have done this before, not using kinetic means. The Stuxnet virus back in 2012 was a way in which to indirectly damage the facility rather than destroying it outright. So it does have other options in case the United States makes the decision to not get kinetically involved.
Well, polls show that most Americans agree that Iran's nuclear program poses a security threat to the United States. However, many do not want to see the United States get involved in another protracted Middle East war. Iran warns it will respond if the U.S. joins the fight. And Iranian state television reported a surprise is coming. that the world will remember for centuries. So what are they talking about, Greg? Do they already have a nuclear bomb? How great is their retaliatory capability to harm America?
I don't trust the Iranian rhetoric and propaganda that's coming out of Tehran right now. In fact, we saw that their main broadcasting building was bombed. A symbol of the revolution's ability to try to broadcast its message is now in smithereens. But beyond that, the Iranians do have three significant retaliatory options that the U.S. should be worried about. The first, as you just mentioned, is the missile threat. The second is the unconventional threat, not just the nuclear bomb, but the potential use of a radiological or dirty bomb that can be on the top of a missile or brought in by other unconventional means. But the biggest threat that the U.S. has to worry about now with its bases overseas and also here at home is Iranian sleeper cells and their ability to wage asymmetrical warfare, the type that killed thousands of American soldiers in Iraq, and the way in which it has also used over the last 46 years to wage terror attacks against Western targets. So the U.S. doesn't just have to be on guard in the region, it also has to be on guard here at home. And that's regardless of whether the U.S. attacks Iran or not. Iran is in a position right now like a feral cat. It's going to lash out, and we don't know how it's going to happen, but we have to be on guard everywhere.
And Greg, the son of the late Shah, Reza Pahlavi, is considered a leading candidate to lead Iran if the regime falls.
The regime's apparatus of repression is falling apart. All that is needed is popular uprising to end this nightmare once and for all. Now is the time to resist. Now is the time to reclaim Iran.
He says the time is now for an uprising, but so far it's yet to materialize. The streets of the capital, Tehran, are empty. Some Iranians I've talked to say they don't want Pahlavi and a return to the monarchy of 50 years ago. So how are the Iranian people responding to all of this?
Well, the best way for the Iranian, especially the opposition, the Iranian people and its opposition outside of the country to connect with people inside the country is to use non-kinetic means. There are entities that exist within the country, whether it be the Bus Drivers Transportation Committee, the truck drivers that were just leading a strike for the past 2 weeks, or even local neighborhood councils, which are all able to organize on a local level. And it's not necessarily going to be the Crown Prince who has the ability to do this, even though he is a very important part of a future transition to a democratic Iran or a government of Iran that's different from those ruled by the Ayatollahs right now. But it requires the U.S. to adopt a policy to allow those opposition groups to unify with those inside the country. And when it becomes U.S. policy to do so, I think you'll see the ability to have a controlled implosion of the regime rather than the chaos that may result if there's not any Western guidance for that process to take place.
End game. This week, President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu unveiled a 20-point peace plan for Gaza. It put Hamas on notice. Embrace peace, release the remaining hostages, or face your ultimate demise. Here to provide some insights on the plan and the prospects for peace is Jewish News Syndicate Editor-in-Chief Jonathan Tobin. Jonathan, you've had some time to digest this peace plan, so how is it different than what we've seen before?
Well, the difference in this plan is not so much, the assumptions that, underlie some of the details, but the fact that President Trump has promised that if Hamas doesn't accept peace, if it doesn't release the hostages, disarm, leave Gaza, turn it over to an international authority, that he will give a green light to Israel to finish Hamas off. That's the difference. In the past, we've had lots of peace plans with lots of theoretical ideas about peace that all sounded good. Indeed, the assumptions behind this current plan all sound good. It just takes a tremendous leap of faith to believe that the Palestinians have had or are willing to change their political culture and embrace peace. But the difference now is that the United States is, adding the or else, which is why it's Trump is being criticized by many on the left. They don't like it, the fact that Hamas isn't being given leeway. They don't like the fact that Hamas is being told, take it or else. But that is the difference here. A lot of the other details in it, in some ways seems like a repeat of past efforts to make peace. The assumption that pouring more aid into Gaza and trusting that there is some kind of I would say, mythical group of Palestinian technocrats who are apolitical and have no interest in destroying Israel. All of those assumptions, they're basically fairy tales, which would be nice if it all came true. But the difference, again, is this time the United States means business, or at least it says it means business, and that is to the good.
And the proposal unveils a positive vision for the future of Gaza. Arab countries and Europeans were involved and reportedly gave it their approval. So how significant is that, their involvement?
It is good in theory. The trouble is we've had, you said it before, we've had other peace plans in the past. Go back to the Oslo Accords in 1993 and all of the peace processing of the last 30 plus years, they all sounded good. But they were all based on this assumption that the Palestinians actually wanted peace. The former Israeli foreign minister, Abba Eban, the late Abba Eban, famously said, the Palestinians never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. And that was very witty. And it was true in that the Palestinians turned down innumerable opportunities for peace dating back to 1947, when the fledgling United Nations offered them an Arab state next to a Jewish state. They've been turning down peace plans all along. But the thing is, they didn't see those as opportunities because they were never interested in peace with a Jewish state, no matter where its borders were drawn. They wanted no Jewish state at all. Their definition of peace is no Jews in what is the land of Israel. Most of the Palestinians are still saying that. That's what Hamas believes. Frankly, it's what the so-called moderates of the Palestinian Authority, who are being told they must reform in Trump's plan, they're not to be trusted on this issue either. Again, the difference is Trump has put teeth in this plan, unlike every other, unlike, say, President Clinton, who also had a nice vision for peace, but when the Palestinians refused to make peace and violated the terms of the Oslo Accords, he turned a blind eye. Trump is saying he won't do that.
Well, an international stabilization force will be established, with Jordan and Egypt training Palestinian police and security personnel. How can Israel be guaranteed those trained will not target Israel again? Can a leopard change its spots?
It can't really be guaranteed. Let's be honest here, and that's that's what I say when there's a lot of elements in this that require enormous leaps of faith. This has been tried before. The Palestinian Authority police were trained by the United States. Forget about Egypt and Jordan. We had U.S. generals, in Judea and Samaria and Gaza, trying to train Palestinian police. And instead, they turned on Israel during the Second Intifada and waged war on Israel. So, no, of course, Israel can't trust to that. But Israel isn't really trusting to that. Israel is not going to relinquish. It's not going to lower its guard the way it did in the past. It's not going to withdraw from Gaza to let Hamas take it back over, or let some new armed force, which can't be trusted, take it back over, only when they see that President Trump's terms are being obeyed and to the letter in terms of Hamas disarming, Hamas giving up control, and a genuine peaceful, government of some sort of administration put in there, will Israel withdraw, and not before that. And that is clear. Prime Minister Netanyahu bent way over backwards to say yes to this plan from his friend President Trump. He even had to apologize to Qatar for going after Hamas terrorists in Qatar, who are hosted there, who fund Hamas, who fund the Muslim Brotherhood, and whom, unfortunately, President Trump and his administration treats as a reliable ally. Netanyahu went a long way to say yes to this, but he's counting on President Trump to keep his word that if Hamas doesn't do as Trump and his decency requires, to release the hostages, to lay down their arms, end this war, which never should have happened, then Israel will not give up another inch of Gaza.
Okay, we'll see what happens here. Jonathan Tobin, Jewish News Syndicate Editor-in-Chief. Thank you, Jonathan. We appreciate it for you being with us and sharing your insights.
Thank you.
Donald Trump has faced significant criticism for his Alaska summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Even his former national security advisor, John Bolton, suggested that the meeting should not have taken place in the USA.
I think Trump has made some mistakes already. Number one, in holding this meeting on American soil, legitimizing a pariah leader of a rogue state.
I would ask Bolton, how else do you expect the United States to help end the war in Ukraine without meeting with the main perpetrator of the violence? Others couldn't believe Trump would actually invite a war criminal, a murderous thug, to American soil. Folks, a look at some history of U.S. meetings with other Russian thugs is appropriate here. Former Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev visited the United States in September 1959. He met twice with President Eisenhower. He killed 3,000 Hungarians in the 1956 revolution and was involved in the killing of as many as 1.5 million people in Joseph Stalin's Great Terror. President Richard Nixon met on U.S. soil with Soviet leader Leonid Brezhnev a total of 5 times in 1973 and 1974. The main focus of those meetings was trade and nuclear arms control. Brezhnev has been criticized for his role in the deaths of more than 100,000 people in Afghanistan and for the thousands of political prisoners in Soviet gulags. Ronald Reagan also met with Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev during a summit in Washington, D.C. in December 1987. I know because I was there reporting about it. They had another meeting in New York in 1988. Those discussions ultimately led to the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces INF Treaty. Gorbachev could similarly be labeled a murderous thug. He's responsible for as many as 500,000 deaths during the Soviet war in Afghanistan, as well as thousands more in Soviet Georgia, the Baltics, and Nagorno-Karabakh. So, folks, Trump is not doing anything differently as he meets with Putin to seek an end to the Ukraine war. So let's remember what Jesus said during his Sermon on the Mount, as detailed in the book of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 9. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. By the way, Mr. President, being a peacemaker and working on peace deals will not grant you entrance into heaven. The only way to achieve that is through God's grace and faith in Jesus Christ. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. I believe him. Do you? Well, that's it from the Global Lane. Until next time, be blessed.